People do put big, bulky, tempered glass aluminum frame solar panels on the boat. My opinion, they take a beautiful looking curvy line boat and make it dog ugly. They're very, very functional. They are heavy, but they're great at generating power.
Hey, it's the Green Boater, and welcome to another episode of the Marine EV Leadership Series. Today, we're diving into the world of marine solar power with Simon Angus, founder and CEO of Open Water Solar. Their mission is to transform the marine solar industry with cutting-edge, lightweight, durable solar panels, specifically designed to withstand the harsh conditions at sea. Simon, welcome to the Green Boater TV.
Thank you, Bruno. It's great to meet you.
Simon, can you just give us a little bit about your connection to the ocean and boating? How did it all start?
Yeah, I've always been on the water. I grew up in the UK, and I was first introduced to windsurfing on Lake Garda on a family vacation, and that was it. I was hooked. So in the middle of winter, I went and got an old windsurfer with a wetsuit with a hole in the knee and taught myself how to windsurf. And that was when I was about 13, 14. And that's it. It's gone crazy since then. And so I'm a mechanical engineer as trade. I've spent 20 years in the oil and gas industry and decided to sort of take my sort of education and passion, merge them together, and out came Open Waters.
Was there somebody or some event that happened that just inspired you to create this company?
Yeah, so the company actually started out as, well, it's Open Waters Design and Manufacturing is technically the name of the company, as Open Waters Solar is our sort of trademark and what we trade under. But we designed and built a 40-foot carbon fiber all-electric sailing catamaran. That we actually, it sort of lies on Vancouver Island right now. And the solar aspect stemmed from that, because that was supposed to be a fully electric boat. It sails amazingly. We were doing 17 knots in 22 knots of breeze, and it's just the most amazing boat ever, but it wasn't all electric. We basically had fundamental flaws with the solar. And I looked at that and said, you know what? This is supposed to be an all-electric boat. I can't sell it as an all-electric boat because the solar doesn't work. And so that's the start of my story of how I sort of started to get into a deep dive into the issues with existing marine solar.
If you could just educate us on I know it's a big topic, but just on the basics of solar and what is really going on in terms of the types of solar that are out there today.
I knew nothing about solar when I started to build my boat. We started in 2019 and I just bought 16 solar panels and threw them on the boat and started to learn. And I think a lot of people do that. They just think solar panels, you just hook them up to a battery and you go. And it's far from the truth. What we learned initially was orientation of solar panels is absolutely critical, and whether they're in series and parallel is critical. How you look after them, how you install them, how you handle them is critical. Basically, how you look after them is what we found is with the boat that we built, there was 3 distinct issues with solar and why I couldn't call it a fully electric, full sustainable boat. The first one was real estate utilization. I bought rectangular panels from 10 watts each, and I could only physically fit so many on the top of the boat, but there was still a lot of real estate left over. Second one was bypass diodes and shading, how I orientated the panels with regards to shading of even rigging and obviously the sails and the boom and the mast. Any sort of shading greatly affects the performance of the panels. And then on that, the voltage of batteries that you're using, whether you put them in series and parallel, and what solar controllers you use. And then the last one, which is the most important one, is how you handle them and how you look after them, and the resulting microcracks that occur within a panel. If you don't look after them, you don't treat them like the delicate nature that they can be. Because basically in the world of solar, there's 2 types of solar panels. There's the rigid ones that you put on your house, and there's the semi-flex ones that are designed for the leisure industry. Now, people do put big, bulky, tempered glass aluminum frame solar panels on the boat, and my opinion, it's only my opinion, is they take a beautiful looking curvy line boat and make it dog ugly. But they're very, very functional. They are heavy, but they're great at generating power. The other option is the semi-flex panels, which can curve to the shape of the boat. You can maybe put them on a bimini, you can glue them down to the deck. They're more in tune with the flow of the boat, and they definitely look better, but they have systemic issues regardless of which manufacturer you buy from, is that they seriously suffer from microcracks. And they call them microcracks because you can't see them. You only see the effects of them, which is a significant degradation in power of your solar panels.
So if somebody were today converting their boat to solar, what are the things that they should be considering?
Well, the first thing is what do you want it to look like? If you don't care and it's a functional commercial craft, then go get some solar panels from a regular solar manufacturer. They put them on a house and go throw them the good efficiency, and they work great. If you care about what your boat looks like, then now you have a few options. All not great options, but there are a few options out there. And one of the probably the biggest things to take into account is shading. What shading do you have? Even motorboats, they'll have masts for radar and sort of everyone has Starlink now, right? And
Yeah.
so, which is incredibly power thirsty, which is good for us. And so everybody has shading on the boat, regardless of whether it be a powerboat. Obviously, sailboats have significantly more. So you need to manage that shading. You can't get rid of it. So you need to manage it. And the second one is that space utilization is how much do I need,
Yeah.
which goes back to how much you are using, and goes back to, do I have an electric boat? Do I have a hybrid boat? Do I have, where am I? Am I in the Caribbean where I'm running air conditioning for a couple of hours a day to cool the boat down before we go to sleep? How much you're using generally depends on determines how much batteries you need, and how many times you want to charge those batteries means how much solar you want to put on your boat.
It's not as simple as it first starts. There's some thought that needs to go into it.
There's a lot of thought that needs to go into it. And when I designed, like I said, when I designed and built our boat, no thought went into it. It was just buy some solar panels, slap them on the roof, and hope it worked. And it didn't. So hence learning occurs when something doesn't work. And that's so it's that education that we can pass on to people so they can make informed decisions, so they can run the generator less, they can get more energy from the solar.
Okay, so you made all the mistakes, and then out came the process of designing and creating your current products. What makes your panels so unique?
Well, basically, let's just deal with the semi-flex panels and leave the ugly rigid panels alone for now. So in the semi-flex panel, everybody does it a very, very similar way, and they take two pieces of plastic, normally one white and one clear, and they laminate it together in a heated press with an EVA encapsulant. That's typically the way a semi-flex panel is built. Day one, they look great, right? But as soon as you handle them incorrectly, if you hold it wrongly, you crack the cell and you generate microcracks. And as a cell gets more cracked, and the current that cell can generate, its efficiency significantly decreases. And sometimes up to sort of 40-50% of the rating of the cell can be lost due to microcracks. So by the time you now, because cells are all in series in a solar panel, so they start at like 0.6, 0.7 volts. And as you put them in series, you add them up and you increase the voltage, whereas the current is static. So one cracked cell that only generates 4 amps instead of 6 means your panel can only generate 4 amps instead of 6. So it's one bad damaged cell affects the entire panel. And if you have more cells in series, more panels in series, then it starts to affect the entire array.
And what causes these cracks? I mean, it sounds like a simple question, but is it just degradation over time, or is it,
No, it's basically impact. So it's not handling them correctly. So everybody will drop something on the boat, whether it be a halyard block or whether it be a winch handle or anything, right? So when they're installed, if you drop something on them, or when you are installing them and maybe you're not handling them correctly, and they're incredibly fragile units. So basically, we wanted to solve that problem. The second problem was basically dealing with the shading. And we'll see a lot of panels that are just installed. And some panels do have inline bypass diodes nowadays. Some still just have one bypass diode in the junction box. But if you install them incorrectly, then you can end up shading sort of group of cells, which just eliminates the entire panel. Because what happens when you shade a cell is that the resistance increases because the resistance drops. And now you drop current in a cell, you drop current in the entire panel. That's why a bypass diode is there, because the bypass diode will just bypass a group of cells. So
just
the rest of the cells,
a partial shading will do this, not shading the
exactly.
entire panel.
So what happens is, if you take a high shadow, say, and it's just not in direct sun, let's say the panel's generating sort of 5 amps, and now you cast a shadow over one cell, that cell will go down to 4.5, 4, 3.5 amps. At some point in time, the resistance gets so much that the bypass diode will open, and that shaded group of cells, or the group of cells which contain the shaded cell, will be eliminated from the string. and that's beneficial for the rest of the panel.
Mm.
So how you orientate those cells with regards to the angle of shadows is very important.
Wow. So you've solved this by encapsulating, and you explained the process that other flex panels do. But your panels, and I've seen on your website, I've seen applications where you're installing them actually in traffic areas. People are walking on them.
Yeah, so you can install. They're basically they're not indestructible, but they're incredibly durable. And our tagline is the lightest, strongest, most durable panels on the market, and that's an order of magnitude of those items, of those sort of features, that they are sort of a much durable, much stronger, and simply because we encapsulate the cells into a fiberglass composite laminate, and we have a balance. So we have fiberglass in front of the cell, fiberglass behind the cell, and that balanced laminate with the solar cell right in the middle allows for unrivaled impact resistance and durability. And we've actually done some tests where we have an EL camera, electroluminescence camera, and we've actually just beaten the panel, just with me beating on it. We sort of look at the original image, we go over to me beating it, and then we come back to the image, and there's no microcracking at all from the cells. So that was really important, that we could protect the cells in a harsh environment. And then the second one is how we orientate the cells. Yes, you can buy a regular panel just off our website, but when you come to me with a customer comes with an order, I'll say, give me a picture of your boat. I need to understand what your shading issues are, because that determines how I design the panel system for your boat. And obviously we'd look at complex curves as well, and sort of look at if there's any curvature on the boat that we need to manage. And then also really important is there a surface of the boat, a plane of the boat, which is facing another direction? If it is, that has to be on a separate circuit. So there's lots and lots of things to think about when you're designing a system for a boat, to make it the most efficient that you can.
Okay, so you just opened up a bunch of questions. First of all, it sounds like the process of how you assemble and make these panels, not only is it customizable, but it sounds like it's unique. Is that something that is your knowledge capital? Is it a patented process? Is it something you
Yeah, that's
sourced
something
out?
that
Or
no, that's something we've developed. So we've developed that from our knowledge of composites, and we found about 500 ways how not to build this product, because you take a fabric that's highly permeable, and a process that relies on highly permeable fabrics to work, and you throw in a very impermeable solar cell right in the middle, and it really makes things complicated in order to achieve that ultra clear sort of layer of fiberglass in front of the cells when you're trying to take it off the mold, and perfection appears, right?
so who is your target customer?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, because it's varies. It really does vary. We thought we knew who our customer was in terms of catamaran owners, and yes, we do have lots of solar panels on catamarans that we've done, but we also have products for monohulls and products for motorboats as well. Like the next boat that we're doing is an 80-foot aluminum hybrid boat.
Mm.
And we should get into that word hybrid, because that's the way the marine industry is going. And what that word means is that solar is no longer a nice to have, it becomes a necessity. Because if you have a hybrid boat, there's not many charging stations on the ocean. In terms of, yes, you got 30 amp plugs, but that's not going to charge a hybrid boat very fastly or very efficiently. So when we're looking at these larger boats, like we've just done a project for Serena Marine in Turkey, where we did 3.2 kilowatts on a 48-foot hybrid motor yacht. That was done sort of, that's on our website, that photograph, and a video as well on our social media, is that you can see that those how and the orientation of those panels, and the types of solar controllers that we used in order to achieve charging of high voltage batteries. Because high voltage PV, we can create PV strings up to 500-600 volts to charge 600 volt lithium batteries, which is that 615 volt range is kind of seems to be the battery voltage of choice for this hybrid, this new
Yeah.
market that's appearing, which is this hybrid yacht market. And it's not just sailboats, it's a lot of power boats are going that way too.
So extended cruisers like my boat, I'm gone
Mm-hmm.
for 3-4 weeks. And as you know, traveling along the coast and remote areas, not only do you not have access to electricity, but there's no fuel either. You have to carry everything with you. So
Right.
solar really extends that whole experience, so that it gives you the freedom to be able to run as you're at anchor, run your
Mm-hmm.
critical systems and power for free, and really extends the range you have without having to come back to the dock.
Exactly, and even if it's just running sort of your hotel loads, your air conditioning, things like that, your induction stove, right? Allowing people to go to fully electric instead of having sort of diesel heaters. Get rid of propane, put an induction stove in. I love cooking on my induction stove. It's just so controllable and it's safe. It's not hot, right? So it's great. So even if it's just taking care of those hotel loads and not having to run a generator, it's hugely beneficial when you're out there to have fun, right? That's why we have boats. We go and have fun on them. Nobody wants to listen to a generator while we're enjoying the peace and tranquility of.
Maybe this is a good time to talk a little bit about your company. If you can just talk a little bit about what's core to your company in terms of your values and your mission. What is your goal that you drive this company forward?
Yeah, it's basically giving people the opportunity to do what we wanted to do with our boat, which is have a fully electric, fully sustainable boat and do it under value. A lot of about sustainability is not being wasteful. And a lot of the solar panels, when I bought my solar panels, and now the guy who I bought them off is my customer, I said to him, I said, this is what's happened. He's like, yeah, these solar panels only last 2 to 3 years. So, well, you didn't tell me that when I bought them. So we're in this disposable economy. And again, if you're replacing your solar panels every 2 to 3 years because they've lost sort of the production capacity, then again, it's not a sustainable. You're not in that sustainable world, right? So the goal was to build something that's actually going to last, and something that is quality and is like you're not going to have to throw away in 2 to 3 years. It's going to last 10, 15 plus years. And that was the goal.
I just saw an article recently about the whole issue of now some of these solar fields that they're putting out. I've seen in Europe just fields and fields just covered with solar panels, and they're experiencing the same thing you just mentioned, that they're degrading and they have to now recycle them. And there's no answer. We don't know how to recycle and repurpose these panels. And these massive things. And I've seen your panels. I mean, these things are thin, and it doesn't look as ominous to sort of recycle and repurpose. And if you say that even lasts longer, then you're keeping those in service for a longer period of time and keeping them out of the landfills.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's what you want to do is you want to cut down on waste. And we're actually going to be switching to a modified sort of greener, more bio-based resin that we're going to be using in our solar panels as of next year. So we're always looking at ways to reducing our own manufacturing costs as well. And obviously with cost is your greenhouse gas emissions in terms of using on some of our solar panels to actually provide heat and power for our manufacturing facility, which although we're in BC and we already have clean energy, that's the point, is trying to be more self-sufficient.
Running a company like yours where you are developing a unique technology, but in a market that's just booming, are you finding that there's an amount of education needed before somebody really understands what they're facing? Especially in the boating industry, there's so much misinformation.
A lot of it comes down to cost because there's a lot of foreign imports, which are very, very cheap. You can buy some solar panels for less than $2 to $3 a watt, which is less than our cost. So we definitely fight cost when it comes to that. And if people want to buy something that's going to last them 3 years because of a cost factor, then that's fine. But when you look at installing these bigger arrays, one of my installers, we were talking about cost, and he's like, yeah, for me to install them is about the same cost as what I buy the panels from you at. So it's about double the cost of the panels is the installation cost. So you don't want to do that every sort of 2 to 3 years. So that's definitely something to think about. And then education as well, in terms of is we're even educating our contractors and our installers about how to install the solar panels. What orientation should they be in? What sort of string length they should have? Where should the bypass diodes be? If there's a change in angle, that should be on a separate circuit.
Is there other things that are coming that you see on the horizon that are emerging as technologies that could shift the whole solar game?
Yeah, so that's going to be focused around the cell technology. So we have encapsulation technology, which has been sort of the biggest single step change in solar in the last 15 plus years. And the next step change is going to come with a change in chemistry of the solar cells, where we're looking at perovskite mixes of silicon and solar instead of just a pure silicon cell. I would hope the industry could see upwards of 30% efficiency within the next sort of 5 to 10 years.
One product that we haven't talked about, which I saw on your website, which looks exciting, is you actually produce a floating panel.
We've had 2 prototypes made right now. Lots of interest on this product. It's really exciting because it gets rid of the shading issues. With the floating solar, if you're an anchor or on a mooring, you can throw it behind the boat, just like with your paddleboard or your kayak. And then when you're underway, you can lash it to the lifelines and have it in the vertical orientation. So now you've got the added benefit of reflection of the sun on the water. And then when you're on the dock, you can just throw it to the foredeck, lash it down, and it's just sat there generating power. And then if you pack it up, it packs up into about a 22-inch by 22-inch by 1-inch thick bag. And yeah,
Wow.
we're quite excited about this product because again, it's the base of our technology, which is this composite solar panel, basically in an accordion style foldable fashion.
How does somebody engage with you, and what's that process from first contact right through to finding an installer?
Yeah, so it depends what the customers want. If they want a standard panel or a floating solar, they can go to the website and they can buy it straight off the website. They can also, if they're after a more sort of full installation package, then there's installers that we have sort of in Canada, the US, Turkey, Vietnam, Australia, UK, where then people can go to them.
Boaters are a peculiar group. You're one, I'm one. I don't mind paying for quality if I get performance and if I get safety. There is so much that's now being forced upon us that's price based, and a lot of it's coming from offshore. What would you advise boaters who are concerned about performance, concerned about safety, want the durability? What would you advise them when they're out looking and they stumble across somebody that's got a story that's almost too good to be true?
Yeah, basically talk to people who have already had them installed. Talk to the installers, right? They're the guys that do the work. They're the guys that warranty the work. Like people can install them on their own. Obviously, there's a lot of DIYers out there. It's
Yeah.
absolutely possible, but there are a few technicalities that you have to watch out for.
If people want to get a hold of you and get a hold of you, information about your company, where is the best place to find that information and get a hold of you?
Yeah, so they can email me at simon@openwatersolar.com or on our website, openwatersolar.com. There's a contact us form there. Just even if they've just got questions about general solar or just want to talk solar on boats, then I'm always willing to talk.
Makes me so proud that a company based in British Columbia has really focused in on the marine market for solar. It's something that is on everybody's minds. You've given an opportunity now for people to think a little bit differently and look at their applications a little bit differently, and it sounds just so compelling. So I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
No, thank you, Bruno.